Hey everybody, welcome to Always Bored, Never Boring. Recently, Hasbro launched their crowdfunding campaign for a new edition of HeroQuest, which is pretty big news. However, as it's a new edition, it has new artwork, new miniatures, it's based on the US version of the rules and not the European version of the rules, and it has severed all ties with Games Workshop and any of Games Workshop's intellectual properties. What that means is it's not the game from my childhood, it's not the game I remember, it is not that time capsule from Christmas morning 1989. For that reason, after much soul searching, I decided that the Hasbro version of the game was not for me, although I am very pleased that they have done it, and I think it's a fantastic thing that so many people are going to get an opportunity to experience HeroQuest. For me personally, it inspired me to do this. I've been on eBay. Now this may look like an original copy of HeroQuest, but it would be more accurate to call it a project. When people sell things secondhand, they sometimes describe them as pre-loved. I think in this particular case, pre-hated might be a better term. This is a copy of HeroQuest that's been through a wood chipper. In fact, I purchased it incomplete and then spent quite a bit of money getting all of the missing parts. And that's just the first step in a process. This is a process that's going to involve restoring dice, stripping and painting miniatures, and repairing the box, and generally trying to the best of my ability, restore this copy of the game. And I thought it might be interesting to turn that into a series. So as an ongoing series on my channel, I'm going to be working through the restoration of this particular copy of the game. I'm going to be doing painting guides for the miniatures, but I'm also going to be doing tips and tricks for how to repair things or improve the quality of things that are looking a little bit rough after 30 years of gaming. And hopefully someone will find that interesting. For this first video in the series, I thought it would be a good idea to share some tips on buying a copy of HeroQuest second-hand off eBay. And I'm looking at this from a UK perspective, so it's probably going to be more useful for people in the UK looking to get a copy, but hopefully there'll be some other things in there that followers from all around the world will be interested to learn about. First of all, when you head to eBay with an idea of purchasing a copy of HeroQuest, you kind of need to know how much you're happy to spend. And I can't tell you how much that is. I can't actually tell you how much a copy of HeroQuest is worth, because it is worth different amounts to different people. I actually purchased this copy for £45, and as I mentioned before, it was missing quite a few things. I sourced all of those individual missing components for an additional £30, and I've ended up with a complete copy of HeroQuest for £75. Well, complete except for I am still missing the original red movement dice. But everything else is there. You can generally find a more complete version of the game, perhaps 100% complete, for around £150. And then you will also find people who are selling copies for £200 or more, which are 100% complete, unpainted, hardly touched, in nice condition boxes. And where you fall on the spectrum on what you're prepared to pay, well, that's entirely up to you. I'm happy with paying £75 for what I've got here, but I paid that £75 with my eyes wide open, knowing that I had a restoration project ahead of me, knowing that I had some work to make this copy the way I wanted it to be. With a ballpark figure in mind for what you're prepared to spend, you next need to consider which edition you want to buy. There are at least 3 editions of HeroQuest in the UK, and of course, there is a different edition in the US. I think some people don't realise that the UK version of the game and the US version of the game are different. In the US version of the game, the monsters have hit points. The Dungeon Master character is called Zargon and has chaos spells that can be deployed throughout the game. Quests are slightly different, treasures are slightly different, and I believe in the US version it's actually possible to buff your heroes to the point where they can roll 6 combat dice, whereas In the UK version, you only get 4 dice in the box, and that's something that sometimes crops up in listings on eBay. You'll hear people saying that it's missing 2 dice because they think there should be 6, but it's a UK edition and therefore only has 4 and only ever had 4. But all that aside, in the UK there were 3 different editions. There was the 1989 edition. That is the edition I had as a child, and that is not this edition. This edition is the 1990 edition. The 1989 edition had a quest book that started with a quest called The Maze. Furthermore, purchasing items was limited to the cards that were available in the equipment deck, and for that reason they duplicated some of the equipment cards. There were 2 helmets and 2 shields. For the 1990 edition, the quest book was changed slightly, and the first mission became the Trial, which is a much more in-depth adventure, a little bit more exciting, a little bit more interesting. Additionally, the duplicate helmet and shield cards were removed, and they were replaced with 2 equipment cards that were purchasable by the wizard. There was the Cloak of Protection and the Bracers. Both of those items help to buff the wizard and make him a little bit more robust and a little bit more useful as the campaign progresses. But there was also a 3rd version of the game called HeroQuest Advanced Quest Edition, which is basically the 1990 edition, but with some henchmen thrown in and a new 13-part quest. And the box for that Advanced Quest Edition is slightly deeper than the original box, and it has a banner along this corner here, specifying that it has additional miniatures and quests. So there are 3 versions. Ideally, I think I would have liked the 1989 edition because that is the one I had as a child, but I have here the 1990 one. The benefit of that is I get those 2 wizard cards, the Cloak of Protection and the Bracers, which are actually quite hard to come by. Which I guess segues into my next point, which is sometimes it's okay to buy a copy of HeroQuest that is missing parts. It's actually quite difficult to find a copy of the game that is 100% complete, and if you do find one, you are going to pay a premium for that. As it turns out, because so many copies of HeroQuest were sold, spares are relatively easy to come by. You can pick up doors for a couple of pounds each, you can pick up miniatures for a few pounds each, you can pick up little cardboard tokens like rubble tiles for a couple of pounds each. It adds up, but individually the items aren't that expensive and they are generally very easy to find. Do not be fooled into paying £15-20 for a plastic miniature. They are available for much less than that, but you do occasionally get the chancers on eBay who are dramatically inflating the prices in the hope that someone is going to get suckered into it. It's even really easy to pick up things like the spell cards. I had to grab a couple of wind cards that were missing from my set. I was able to buy a set of 3 wind cards, and it cost me, I think, £3.50 delivered. So if you get a good deal on the base game and you just need a few bits and pieces to finish it off, it's often worth doing. With a few caveats. There are a few things that are much more difficult to source. One is miniatures for the actual heroes. If you're missing an orc or a goblin or a mummy, that's not really a problem. If you're missing an elf or a dwarf or a barbarian, you can be looking at considerably higher prices to replace those. The second thing is, funnily enough, the original movement dice. They're basic wooden red D6 movement dice, and most copies of HeroQuest are missing them, and they are very hard to replace like for like. If you're in America, or you're prepared to pay massive import prices, you can actually purchase a set of reproduction dice. You will get 6 combat dice and 2 movement dice, which are apparently, I've not seen them in person, but apparently they're pretty close to the originals. But if you actually want to buy original movement dice, good luck with that. They're pretty rare. Finally, while most of the cards are easy to get, you can probably buy a complete deck of treasure cards for less than £5. There are 2 cards that are more difficult to get. They are, of course, Bracers and Cloak of Protection. The reason they're harder to get is, firstly, they were only available in the 1990 version of the game, and therefore there's a lot less of them. Secondly, and this is an assumption on my part, a lot of people who have the 1989 edition of the game have gone and purchased those extra cards to have them for their copy. If you had a 1989 copy of the game and then you found out there were 2 extra cards that you were missing, you'd go on eBay and get them, wouldn't you? And I think that's what's happened, and that's why they are much harder to find. In fact, at the time of shooting this video, there are no copies of either of those cards available on eBay in the UK. Next up, let's talk about painted miniatures. A lot of the copies of HeroQuest you will find online will have painted miniatures, or something that is an approximation of painted miniatures. Be wary of eBay listers who describe miniatures as well painted. They are almost always lying. Now, I have always said on my channel that everyone should have a go at painting. Painting should be fun, it should be part of the hobby, and there's actually a certain charm in opening up a box you bought on eBay and finding miniatures that have been painted by someone who had that game before, because that painting does tell a story. It tells a story of love, it tells a story of people who had a game and enjoyed it and they wanted to put their personal mark on it. So even terrible paint jobs, I think, are wonderful things. But they were wonderful paint jobs for the people who originally owned that game. They're not your paint jobs, and you probably don't want them. So when you're looking at copies of games on eBay, there's kind of 4 grades when it comes to the miniatures in the box. First of all, and the ideal scenario, is unpainted. Like this gentleman here, I actually had a mixture of painted and unpainted miniatures in my box. And look at that, the original wonderful grey plastic, the mini Slambo of the game, ready for me to clean up, undercoat and paint myself. That's the ideal, that's what you want. That's going to make life easier. And also, of course, if you don't want to paint the miniatures, especially with something like HeroQuest with all the coloured components, you have that nice traditional old school feel to your game where everything is in the original coloured plastic, and that's a great thing too. If you can't get unpainted, next best thing is painted really well, because they're going to look really nice. You know, I would much rather have my own paint on something than something that has been painted by somebody else. But if they have done a really, really good job, then I am happy to keep those paint jobs and just call it a day and just enjoy them. And again, like I said, there is a certain charm in the narrative of the game, the way that that game has been owned and used over the years. And there's a story in the box of people who have invested their time and effort into those products. Unfortunately, most copies of HeroQuest were painted by 9-year-olds using a toothbrush. The next best option is part painted without undercoat, and that's what we have here with this femur. There has been no undercoat applied to this miniature, and they've kind of relied on the fact that it's a green miniature and just painted the bits of armor, the axe and the eyeball. It's actually quite a cute job on that eye. On the face with the teeth. That's quite cute. They've not done badly there. But there's no undercoat on that miniature. That's going to make it much easier to strip the paint off. And I will be doing a video down the line showing how to strip the miniatures and prep them for putting your own paint on them. And of course, the 4th level of painted miniatures is miniatures with a thick, gloopy coat of enamel over everything that's obscuring the details and is going to take a blowtorch to get it off. I will avoid that if possible. HeroQuest obviously comes with lots of really nice furniture, which is a combination of plastic components and card. Normally, it's not that common for copies to be missing just a bit of the furniture. However, there are commonly recurring problems like cracks in the treasure chest because the cardboard curves over, and over the years it just becomes brittle and then cracks. And things like the tables, the treasure chests, and the throne have little support struts that hold it all together, and normally those go missing. I think I have 1 table that's missing a strut and 3 treasure chests that are missing struts. It is possible to source replacements. It is possible to actually make support struts. You can actually do it using rounded sprues. But in most cases, you don't even really need the support struts. If you actually assemble the furniture and use glue to put them all together, which is something I'm going to be doing when I restore mine, you can get away without actually having the support pieces in place. But the one piece of furniture, and you know what I'm going to talk about because it's right there in front of me, the one piece of furniture that is always an issue is the sorcerer's table. There are two things to be aware of with the sorcerer's table. One, it came with candles. 2 candles, not 4 candles. 2 candles, and they are almost always broken. They are almost always broken to the point where some people have listed candles on eBay for £30 just because they are not broken. A lot of people think that the candles break because they're really, really thin and the plastic was brittle. This is not the case. The reason these candles broke is because once they were pushed into the table and stood in the box upright, they were actually taller than the depth of the box. So when you chucked your game board on top, the candles immediately snapped off. I would hazard a guess that around 95% of the broken candles were broken the very first time that excited 9-year-olds chucked their sorcerer's table back into the box and closed the lid. It was not a well thought out move. So generally, you have to accept that your candlesticks are going to be broken. If you find one with unbroken candlesticks, you can guarantee the person selling it has specified in the title that it has unbroken candlesticks and they are charging a premium, and a lot of people are going to be chucking money at it to get 2 tiny little pieces of plastic which honestly are not worth it. You will notice sometimes that people have removed the candles because they just push in. I can't get one out now. But they push in here, and people have replaced them with rats or skulls, and that kind of looks just as good, really. If you are worried about having the candlesticks, aim to get them this length. You can see I've got 2 different lengths of mine. This one is actually broken off where the candle begins, because there would be a candle up here, and then this is a complete candlestick. This one is actually snapped part way up the candlestick. So if you can get 2 that are that length, that's probably as good as it's going to get without spending a lot of money. The second thing to note, as illustrated here with my particular example, is there's no cardboard surround for the bottom of the table. You will quite often see people listing copies of HeroQuest on eBay and saying it is missing the cardboard surround from the sorcerer's table. Fun fact, there was no cardboard surround for the sorcerer's table, not in the 1989 edition of the game and not in the 1990 edition of the game. In the US edition of the game, they did have a cardboard surround for the table, and it looked exactly like this one, except it didn't have this notch cut out. This is actually the piece from the bottom of the alchemist's bench. Look, it says there, alchemist's bench. So you can, if you want to, actually use it on your sorcerer's table. So if you have a quest that only requires one or other of the table, you can use that. But you will notice that because there is this notch cut out, you can see a little bit of the grey showing through. But that's what we should have got in the UK. For whatever reason, it was left off of the punch board. I have seen complete copies of the punch boards of the 1989 and 1990 editions, and it is not present. So if you ever see someone selling a sorcerer's table and listing it as missing the cardboard surround, if it's a UK version of the game, it's probably safe to say it never had one in the first place. I have to say, I don't know if it was changed for the HeroQuest Advanced Quest edition of the game, but I very much doubt it. But at this point, I think that's about all I have to say. As I mentioned at the start of the video, I am planning to chart my progress with restoring this game in a series of videos. So there will be some videos coming up showing my efforts to restore the dice, fix up the box, strip the miniatures and repaint them, and generally give this box some love and attention. But that's it from me for now. Thank you so much for listening. If you've enjoyed the video, please consider pressing the like button. If you've really enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing if you don't already do so. And hopefully, I will see you all again very soon. Bye bye everyone. Bye bye.